information. This is very important because information theorists such as Henry Quasler point out that we habitually and quite rightly associate the origin of information with the activity of intelligent agency. So that when we find an origination of information someplace where it was not before, I think it calls for or suggests intelligent agency. Again, not of the existence of God. This is evidence for design that conduces toward theism, but I think it certainly points in that direction rather than atheism.
Christopher?
But the more we know, the more it replaces the question. I mean, there were forms of quasi-life, so pre-bacterial, pre-microbial, went off an extraordinarily long period of time. They don't appear to have been exactly conscious, but nor precisely inert either. Microscopically evolved into later forms. It goes on in this pointless, rather horrible, rather boring way for a very, very, very long time. The point is, what designer wants to make it come out like that? Meanwhile, as life gradually takes hold, 98% of its forms are obliterated without pity. If it wasn't for us knowing about them, they would never have existed. They only exist because we know about them. They didn't otherwise ever exist at all. And if we go, which we might, they won't have existed any more than we did. Now, who wants to make it come about like that? Take the project of eternal life, which I'm glad to find is nothing to do with any other concept of eternity that we could possibly give a name to. It's God's target, apparently, that we all attain this. Because I'm now talking to someone who has openly said that they are a believing Christian. Well, now, I've often wanted to know, if that's what he wants us to have, why do we have to go through this horrible interlude where the odds are stacked against us? What's the point of what used to be about 20 years of miserable life where it's almost impossible to avoid committing a mortal sin, to now, thanks to mainly to our efforts, okay, you've got 80 years where the odds are stacked against you. You're born sick, you're created ill in a hostile environment and commanded to be well. And if you can pass certain tests with the odds stacked against you, then you'll get eternal life. What is this? What designer does this kind of thing? Wants it, thinks it's fun to behave this way, thinks there's any justice or point in any of that? What is this really? But here's another insult for you. But the rantings of frightened children trying to make sense of things they don't understand, and terrified of a dictator who they're willing to appease and propitiate by everything from human sacrifice to the murder of their own children. This is not good for us morally. It's not good for us ethically. It makes no sense intellectually. It makes no sense scientifically either.
Well, with all due respect, I don't think you answered the question. But
what was the question again?
No, Christopher, and is it your belief that the scientists believe that organic matter has existed as long as inorganic matter?
The devout lady who asked this question, who emailed this in, said, until recently didn't know that any of these phenomena had ever existed. If you told her 100 years ago that everything was specially created by God, she'd have believed that too, or that the fossils were put in the rocks by God to test our faith. She'd have believed that just as well. Now that she knows better, she says, all that proves is that God was more ingenious than we thought. Just as those who used to deny the Big Bang or the evidence of physics, now persuaded of it or unable to refute it, say, oh well, all it shows is the designer was cleverer than we thought. This is an argument that fails for a very famous reason, the reason put forward by Professor Karl Popper. It is unfalsifiable. And unfalsifiability, as every trained mind knows, is the test not of the strength of an argument, but of its weakness. This argument cannot be defeated. It cannot be overthrown. It reverse engineers every discovery we make and says, oh, that simply proves God is smarter than we ever thought. So these are the same people.
Who are
the same people who would have said that the fossils were put in the rocks to test our faith.
So then, Christopher, so your answer is...
So I don't really accept the grammar of their questioning.
So you
just a point of clarification.
We have a debate where you just say, I don't accept the question.
I don't accept the grammar of the question. Someone who doesn't actually believe in science at all, who's been reluctantly persuaded.
Well, how do you know this woman doesn't know?
Because she emails that question wherever I go. She's followed me all over the place.
So you think you're being followed?
I know only too well. The Pope now says, oh, well, yeah, maybe the Big Bang shows that God was smarter than we thought. It's all knickers, isn't it, to argue like that?
So
It means that nothing,
Okay,
nothing
well,
one can possibly say can count as an argument, because all of it only proves the ingenuity of the designer in the first place. And this comes from people who used to believe that special creation occurred, that the human eye couldn't possibly have been done except at one go. The only thing that can't have happened was the only thing they could be induced to believe. When they're told, actually, there are 40 different species of eye, separately evolved, and that the only way it can have come is by evolution, they say, oh, come to think of it, that shows how smart God is. This doesn't meet the definition of a good question or a good argument at all. It's not even good propaganda.
So you're just grading the question as a failing question?
Yeah, and that one doesn't pass.
Okay. How about this one?
We have 2 minutes.
Have scientists ever observed a distinct species evolve as distinct from changes within a species?
Is that mine?
Jay,
I could object to the grammar of the question and join you, I suppose, because the problem is that it's a question of what the definition of a species is. The Galapagos finches, for instance, it's often defined in terms of being able to reproduce among your kind. But of course, you're separately isolated, it's difficult to verify that question. And so what exactly is a species, and whether or not one species has evolved into another, I don't think is a crucial or important question in the debate we have here this evening. I think it's quite possible that one species could evolve into another. I do think that most of the very good evidence for the power of natural selection falls under the survival of the fittest rather than the arrival of the fittest. So it's questions like variations in the thickness of finch beaks in the Galapagos Islands based upon variations in the climate, so that seeds change their properties. But you have a cyclical variation. You don't have the origination of some fundamentally different kinds of organisms or organelles. And so I think that natural selection, in principle, has the explanatory power to explain some of these minor things. I am unpersuaded that it has the power to explain all of the adaptive complexity in biology, and I think we're discovering with increasing frequency structures that are inaccessible to the Darwinian mechanism and that suggest foresight.
Christopher?
Well, when the ridiculous figure of Governor Michael Huckabee said he didn't believe in the theory of evolution, he said he didn't believe that he himself was descended from a monkey. Now, that means he doesn't even know what the theory of evolution is. He disbelieves in something he doesn't know about. If we were descended from monkeys, we might look a bit more like Governor Huckabee, I sometimes think. The theory is this, that we have common ancestors, that, yes, we can very, very definitely, by studying the human genome, we can very definitely show the emergence and existence of a new species, our own. No longer are there any Cro-Magnons or Neanderthals to rival us. Yes, it's very plain, written all over us, what Darwin calls the lowly stamp of our origin, that we and they have a common primate and mammalian ancestor, but we, Homo sapiens, are now a new species on the planet. That's indubitable, undeniable, sometimes, I think, rather unattractive, but it answers the question, the grammar of which was very well phrased.
Ben, we have some closing comments.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we can now say, I think, that we've heard two incredibly smart human beings, Cro-Magnons, discuss this, and I must say, Primates. I, for one, feel myself much better informed than I was an hour and a half ago. I'd like to thank you very much, Christopher. You're totally wrong about Nixon, but then so is everyone else. Thank you, Jay. Thank you very, very much. You both did a beautiful job. I'm really stunned at the erudition of both of these gentlemen. Very glad I never had to play against either of you on Wittgenstein's money. Anyway, thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Thank you so much.